I feel like Zoom has come a long way with that. Got it. I feel like that's more like friendly than it used to be. And we'll be talking today about the potential importance of friendly language. So I think that's exciting to see how people are doing that. Since we have quite a bit to cover and we're going to start with introductions, I am just going to move us along. So it's fine if any of your colleagues are planning on joining in the next few minutes. I think that they will have no problem getting caught up. So to start, I did just want to give you all a full sense of the agenda for today. So we do have, we're presenting on a really collaborative team. And I mean, overall, we're going to take you through 3 core components of what we call a behavioral science approach. And most of today's presentation, luckily, will not be my voice, but will be the voices of your colleagues and peers who are representatives from 3 state SNAP E&T programs in Kentucky, Oregon, and Rhode Island. So we have coast to coast, which I think is exciting. And then we also will encourage your participation. We have some polls. We have opportunities for you to write in the chat at any time. So we are hoping this can be as much of a conversation as you can have with like 100 people. So we will do our best and really appreciate seeing you all here. So with that, I was going to kick us off to turn this over to Moira Johnston, the director of the SNAP Office of Employment and Training from the FNS National Office. If you're on the line, I saw you before, Moira.
Yes, can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be joining you for the last Snap to Skills webinar for this latest round of the project. As you know, since 2015, FNS has worked with 27 states through the Snap to Skills project to help them expand their programs through the use of skills-based strategies. For the past few years, we focused on operations and policies, helping states lay the groundwork for expansion and reach out to new partners. In the last round, which started in early 2020, we shifted the focus to participants. Amid widespread work from states working to build new partnerships and adopt best practices, SNAP E&T participation was still a small fraction of eligible SNAP participants. So together with MDRC and the Seattle Jobs Initiative, FNS started this new phase of technical assistance that was designed to look at the experiences of SNAP participants as they progress through the SNAP E&T process. Using a proven method developed by MDRC, Snap to Skills worked with states to identify challenges to participation and test new solutions. Today, you'll hear from states about how this model helped them better understand the challenges of SNAP E&T participants and any design changes they made in their programs to encourage participants to take advantage of E&T services. But also keep in mind that all of this happened in the middle of a global pandemic. I really want to thank the participating states for hanging in there, despite massive office closures, huge SNAP application increases, and the other demands on them that stem from the massive changes we all experienced over the last year and a half. It was not an easy road, but states came up with thoughtful, creative, and really common sense approaches that they'll share with you today. Snap to Skills has been an essential part of FNS's strategy to help states expand their E&T programs and help them adopt skills-based programs. And I want to thank our partners, MDRC and the Seattle Jobs Initiative, for leading this important and innovative work. Lastly, though this round of the project is coming to a close, we should be ready to share what's next for the Snap to Skills project. We look forward to continuing to provide technical assistance through this project as states tackle the new requirements from the 2018 Farm Bill and build programs that support an equitable economic recovery. I look forward to hearing from states today about their experiences and successes. As always, if you have any questions or need support, please reach out to any of my team in the Office of Employment and Training or your FNS regional office. So with that, I will turn it back to you.
Great, thank you so much, Moira. Okay, so yeah, as you already nicely summarized, in case folks are visual learners, this is a little bit of a snapshot of our team. As I mentioned, coast to coast, we've been able to work with all of the states through engagements like this and through the website, the SNAP Skills website and newsletters and some other endeavors. But in general, we've really done a deeper dive with these 7 all-star states who, as Moira pointed out, continue to meet with us roughly monthly for the last 18 months, which was also pretty much exactly the period of the global pandemic, and which started and does not appear to be over yet, unfortunately. So I think with that, there was a lot of flexibility, and hopefully there were actually some interesting insights that we were able to glean with this, different than usual time. So we also wanted to get a little bit of a sense. We did the introductions, but just sort of a snapshot of who is on the line and what sort of roles you have. I think we have a poll if you're able to launch it, Annie. Should just take a minute. Yeah, so if you can just quickly fill it out. And this is also a little bit of an engagement strategy to try to, keep you all engaged and participating. And hopefully you're comfortable with the chat, you're comfortable with the polls, and we just really encourage you to, to participate, to ask your questions, and we will really try to get to any questions, especially when you hear from your colleagues and you want to know specifically why they made certain choices or what they learned or what advice they have. Okay, so I'm going to just give it one more minute. A bunch of people are still filling it out. Okay, I'm going to do a little countdown. 3. Oh, people, the responses are still coming in. Well, I can tell you right now, it looks like we're about 15% caseworker, case manager, which is really important, and about 6% eligibility staff. So if you are one of those people who works directly with participants or clients, I think that's something we're going to be talking about, how important it is to keep those, basically to try to raise up client voices. And one of the best tools we have is to try to include our eligibility staff and our frontline staff in some of these conversations. And hopefully you'll hear a little bit about what kind of insights that can unlock. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. I think it's enough. Oh, said failure. Hold on. Got it. Maybe, are you able to share the results, Annie? Oh, can you see the results now? Yeah, I see a nod. Okay, thank you. Sorry, my screen looks a little different. Okay, so here's what we have. So we have the majority either, sort of caseworkers or staff supervisors. We also have 11% nonprofit representatives, so that's nice. And that could mean more of an outside partner like MDRC or SJI, but it could also mean a lot of these SNAP providers and partners who are a key part of the program with E&T. So yeah, here, that's our breakdown. So thank you for doing that. I'm gonna X out. Okay, so moving along.
Excuse me, this is Karen Glenn. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm not able to view anything. I'm in the meeting, and every time I sent the message, it's saying that it's failed, and my screen is like blank. I'm in the right place. Because I have you on my phone, but I'm not able to view anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't actually used it very much on the phone. I'm sorry about that. I don't know if possibly, yeah, if you're not, maybe you can just listen. I'm honestly not sure. Maybe Annie can try to send you a chat message and see if she can help at all. So I'm guessing you still can't see anything.
Yeah, I have the meeting on the laptop, but I just have the audio on the phone. But I'm actually in the meeting on the laptop.
Yeah, I'm sorry because I can't see your screen. I'm not sure, but perhaps Annie can send you a link and on chat and see if that works. I'm gonna I wish I could help more. Okay. I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna
That's
keep moving with the presentation and hopefully at least the audio will be helpful. But I appreciate you letting me
okay.
know. Sorry about that.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna jump into a little bit of an overview on this behavioral science concept, which is kind of a buzzword, so you may have heard a lot about it or a little about it. So I'm Rebecca Schwartz. I am a research associate with the Center for Applied Behavioral Science, which we call CABS at MDRC. And MDRC, if you don't know, is a nonprofit with the goal of building evidence to improve social policy, specifically working with programs serving low-income individuals across the United States. And together with colleagues across MDRC and with Seattle Jobs Initiative and FNS and all the partners we just mentioned, we've been working to understand and apply this field of behavioral science, which is about how and why people make the choices that they do. And behavioral science combines evidence from academic fields ranging from economics, psychology, neuroscience, and more. So our model at the Center for Applied Behavioral Science at MDRC really centers on partnering with practitioners to better serve the human beings at the center of human services. And I think that in that way, we've had a lot of successes with a lot of partners like a SNAP or E&T agency or partner, because you all, really care about people. That's why you do what you do, and you're interested in improving lives. We know, though, that improving lives is really not that simple, and we think of it in behavioral science as a series of choices. So when you think of something that seems relatively simple, like a person has agreed to participate in SNAP E&T and they have an appointment for an assessment, for example, it might seem straightforward, but in fact, the participant, like all of us, because we're humans, we have a lot of factors that could influence our decisions. So from the participant perspective, one way I like to think about it is thinking about what, why, and how. Those are just, simple question words. But for what, we're thinking about what information do participants need to know to make it through any given step. Are they receiving too much information, not enough information? Is there a long letter with small font for them to sift through? There's just could be a lot of information barriers. Number two, in terms of why, we think about why would they be motivated to attend this assessment? They probably are juggling a lot of other things, and is it clear to them how this assessment might benefit them and why maybe they might want to show up now instead of at another date? And then for the how, that's where we think about appointment information and sort of timely reminders. And we get a lot of reminders in our day-to-day, like a doctor's office or a dentist especially is good at this, at texting you. And are we able to do some of the same things to give people a chance that instead of just giving them the information once, are we giving them a few opportunities? So I wanted to talk about one thing, and it sort of relates to the map icon that you see as the first bar, one of the first potential barriers. And a lot of people ask me, what makes a barrier, behavioral as opposed to structural? So if you think about client transportation, we understand that a lot of communities have limited public transportation. And so that could be a structural barrier, like getting a client a car or the fact that there's no good bus line. But a behavioral barrier would be about planning. Like, for example, did a client know that they didn't have a ride 3 weeks ago, but they never mentioned it and the county never asked? And then it becomes, the day of the appointment and the client missed. And that's something that maybe could have been anticipated. So that's just an example of why we think that it's worth looking into these behavioral factors. So in addition to challenges, we also see opportunities. So basically, this example is, seems very basic, but when we go to the store, we might be the kind of person who decides in advance that we want to make guacamole to take a very, apologies if you don't like avocados. I didn't used to, but now I do. So I understand either way. So when we go to the store, we might be the kind of person who decides in advance that we want to make guacamole. So the setup on the left is where, a standard supermarket where you have to find all the ingredients, you make your list in advance and you go to all the necessary aisles. But a lot of people might not decide that they want guacamole in advance. And yet when they see the display on the right, it makes it easier to think about what they want. And then if they do want to move forward and buy the guacamole, it makes it easier to buy either the separate ingredients or there's even the option for a fully pre-made guacamole. So it might seem like a weird analogy, it might make you hungry, but when thinking about your participants and the way you present choices, you do want to think about how easy it is for participants to opt in to services like E&T. So the same way that this supermarket is A, making it very easy to buy guacamole, but B, it's not forcing anyone to make that decision. It's just presenting the choices in a very intuitive way. So the last point I'll make about the opportunities overall, this is a little abstract, and then we'll get into the specifics of what your colleagues did with E&T, is just this idea that it's hopefully empowering, that I like the term choice architecture. So that was, I think, exemplified with the guacamole example. So there's no such thing as a neutral design. So the way that choices are presented right now, choices like deciding to participate in E&T, is sort of nudging people one way or the other. It's either really hard and not compelling, and so a lot of people are not going to do it, or it's really compelling and then more people might want to do it. But you actually have a lot of power here to do things like reordering the grocery store did not require, like, you know, probably like maybe a manager had to approve that decision, but it didn't require like going up to the head of the chain of the supermarkets and like asking if they could make a policy change to make that happen, right? So it's like trying to think about maybe longer term, you want bigger picture policy changes, but maybe in the shorter term, there are little things you can do to things like processes or forms or interactions between staff and clients. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We have another poll, which is to get you all thinking before we hear from our guests about, for your program, I mentioned that we think of things as a series of choices. Annie, would you be able to launch the poll? Thank you. So you think about your process as a series of choices from the participant perspective. So I'm curious where you think you're having the biggest missed opportunity. It could be, you know, and we're going to learn about some tools that your fellow states used to delve into this, but you first would want to pick a general area to focus on, and it'd be good to have that area in the back of your mind as you see your colleagues present, with the idea of potentially making this as practical and tangible for you all as possible. So yeah, we have the initial referral, which is often done, I think, at the eligibility stage. Then people sort of say yes to a referral and they fill out, they have to meet for an assessment. Then there's usually a handoff. And then we also have reverse referrals. Just give it another minute. Okay, I think we can go ahead and launch the poll. Thank you. So this is interesting and kind of good news, because about half of you said that it's the initial referral, and that makes sense because a lot of people are signing up for SNAP, and a very small number of those, at least in some of our states that we work with, are actually being referred to E&T. And then some of you also talked about the handoffs as the number 2 very sort of engagement challenge, and that makes sense too, because whenever you have different organizations involved, that's even harder than within one organization. So hopefully you'll keep these in mind, and if you have specific questions. I see a question, how are you defining provider? And I think that we've heard some places call them providers or partners, so I think it's kind of any intermediary, or it could be both. But that's where you get specific. Thank you for asking. I don't think that was a great answer, but it's good to think about any handoff is an opportunity. If you remember that chart of the person with the goal, every handoff is like a new place where that person has to jump all those hurdles to get there. And how do you make that as easy as possible? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. Here we go. Okay. So as I said, it's interesting that you all said, or the majority of you said initial referral, because that is where all three of the states you're about to hear from focused on. And so for the first section of their sharing, they're going to actually talk about that participant centering and how they each used actually all of the tools that they're going to share with you, which is developing a persona, conducting participant interviews, and also developing a customer journey map. They all did all of those plus some additional activities, so they did a lot of work. But we are going to have each of them share one snapshot to give you a diverse array of potential techniques. And please do think about if these are things that you have done or might be useful for you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ann Smith from Kentucky. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. To begin, we created a persona. So when we think about this persona, we have to understand our clients, and we have to understand that each of them are unique and individual. But this persona, we did this with the teammates in this pilot, and we actually had 3 and we merged them all together. So the persona is an imagined profile of your typical SNAP E&T client. When you do this, your team will use a persona to expand upon your problem statement and begin to understand your client's experiences with your program more deeply. Your persona should represent the engagement problem in your problem statement. Before you begin or build your persona, I think you want to think of a picture of your person in your mind. Imagine that they're sitting across from you at your desk, and that that way you can actually humanize your client. Because I think sometimes we forget in our day-to-day, life, we are, interviewing clients over the phone, and it's just, somebody on the phone. But really, if we humanize the client, we're going to have their experiences and be able to have that better picture of and representation of the client. I'm sorry, excuse me. Technology. So by doing this, you're going to have a new set of eyes in which you can see your program. So as you can see on your screen, we developed Bethany. She's from a small town in Kentucky. She said the goal was financial stability, and she just wanted to get back to her customer service roots, and she's worked in fast food and retail. And we said that she was a person that was subject to the time limit. She did have a high school education. She was couch surfing, so she didn't have stable housing. She was able to use a smartphone, but she didn't have a computer, and her car that she had was in rough shape. So and one thing that we had was Rebecca created actually a form to create this persona. So it was very easy to write out the problem statement and address all the basic information. And by us combining this into one persona, it was a really good way to identify our customers and understand from their perspective. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Candy in Oregon.
Sorry, I was getting to the unmute. Hello, everyone. We're very honored to be selected to participate in SNAP to Skills and share some of our experiences working on this project. So Oregon is going to talk about how we gathered participant feedback. So as we were developing our journey mapping, which you'll hear more about from Rhode Island next, but we had to make assumptions about how a participant would feel and think. So at that time, it became very apparent to us and very important to us that instead of just assuming, we needed to ask the participants directly what they were thinking and how they were feeling. So as a result of that, we developed a set of questions for SNAP E&T navigators to ask each of the participants that were referred to them some of these questions. And on the slide, you can see some of those questions that we did ask. And so when you're looking over those questions, you're going to see that these questions were designed to get a better handle on what the experiences with the SNAP E&T program have been in the past. We wanted to see what preconceptions they may have when they're talking to our navigators. Did they have a bad experience? Do we need to resolve some of those so they're more open to engaging in the program in the future? As well as asking what they would like to see in available services and what their internet access was like. And the reason we had that internet access on there is because, as we all know, through the pandemic, we had to really move towards virtual services. So we wanted to see if that was going to be a barrier that we needed to address immediately. And in the 1 week that we had assigned to our navigators to complete these questionnaires, we had about 11 conversations with individuals. Those individuals agreed to engage in these and for us to collect this information and to roll it up. What the results showed us is that it really confirmed what our assumptions were. So when we were going through that journey mapping and we were making some of those assumptions, we were right on the mark. So that was nice to know. Also, if you were thinking about doing something like this in your own state, some things to think about is it's going to be really important to develop a tool that you can collect all those answers and be able to roll that up and analyze. We created a document, and it would have been much easier if we had collected it in some kind of a tool or database that we could have rolled that up easier. Something else to consider is that you really need to ensure that there is enough time for the staff to have these kind of questions, because sometimes these are things that you're going to come up in regular conversations anyway, but we are expanding the amount of questions we had, and so we wanted to ensure that the navigators did have enough time to have those conversations. We also really wanted our navigators to not just go down a list of questions and say, okay, I have 3 questions for you, or whatever the number is. Instead, to rephrase them and to have the conversation be as organic as possible, and not to have it feel like, you know, they're just taking a survey. We really wanted to dive deeper into what their experiences are and what their desires for their employment goals were. So I think that's pretty much it that I had on this participant feedback. But again, it was really great for us to engage in this and to get that feedback directly from the participants themselves. So I'm going to hand this over to Patty in Rhode Island.
Thank you. So as you see, my job is to talk about the customer journey map. And the piece here that's really important is a full customer journey map is long and complicated, but so necessary. And we mapped out the potential experience of our persona, Manuel, and you've heard about Kentucky's persona. You know, to think about direct referrals and how folks share information and this process, to lay it out in a linear fashion was really hard for us. Because there's so many nuances, right? So as you can see, we've got arrows and multiple pathways and sticky notes that help to prompt us to start thinking about other things that come up during this entire process. The key points and the key categories are the participant touch points, time, participation, participants' thoughts, their feelings, and the back office steps that happen, but participants may not see. The red and yellow touch points were the ones we identified as the pain points for our participants. You know, with this process, you can understand fully the individual's experience and really get deeper into what happens and gain more insight into their experience and how they're going through this. And also identify when the program is confusing for participants. So we use this exercise to narrow a few steps in the process to focus on, and that's the next slide, please. So here we are with our next slide. And these are the areas that we focused on. So if you look at it in terms of the touch point, this is Manuel interviews with the SNAP eligibility worker on the phone. It takes about 30 minutes. His thoughts and his feelings. Again, the folks that I had on my group were for internal staff, were a couple of eligibility technicians, a supervisor, a senior casework supervisor, and myself. So it was really a good collection of people who were experiencing and talking to these individuals regularly. So it was easier to come up with that persona. And I would say in the journey map, it's really good to get a strong representation of everyone who's involved in the process. We also had our social worker who does the outside referral to the provider. So that gives you an idea of some of the thoughts that happen, the feelings that he's having, and the staff action, which is lovely. And then once that happens, then we get into, the 2-minute or 5-minute conversation about E&T. Do I have to commit? How do I get into this? Could I lose my benefits? Oh, there's no cost. So starting to get maybe a little reticent, maybe some anxiety about it, but also some encouragement. I think the last piece here in that column is so important, because what this process did for us is it helped us to establish that we had 2 customers. So not only did we have the participant and the applicant, but we also had the staff and the ET staff and the individuals talking about eligibility that may not have known everything. And also because of the pandemic, things were changing and shifting, trying to get information out to folks. So there was certainly some anxiety and reticence and concern from both the customer and our eligibility technicians and our field staff. But that all kind of comes back to being all right. Manuel gets his EBT card, and he's starting to feel a little more comfortable and hopefully happy about the fact that he's taking care of this aspect of his life, and now maybe potentially getting some more. So those were our experiences with the customer journey map. I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Great, thanks so much. So I'm gonna, great, I really appreciate already some people are putting some questions in the chat, and we're gonna open it up for questions. If you can start by posting in the chat, then I'll call on you. So I will just say, just to, if there are things specifically that you want to ask about, I think for now we are focusing on these techniques to do what we would call behavioral diagnosis. So really understanding from the participant's perspective, and hopefully these were some specific techniques, developing the persona, getting customer feedback, and really just taking the participant's perspective to understand the process. I think with the journey map, one of the interesting things is that, most staff have to spend a lot of time, or agencies, understanding the process from the staff perspective, because that's quite complicated in itself with all the required paperwork and data entry. And it can be hard to kind of flip the switch and see what it looks like from the participant. What are they seeing and not seeing? And where is there, again, maybe too much information or not enough information? And another thing we didn't really get to share is that people did take a look at some data. So yeah, we're gonna open it up to questions. I saw, Todd, were both of your questions answered, Todd? I know Todd Hunter asked about, for Kentucky, what do you do with the persona once it's developed? And I think there's a few things you can do. I mean, part of it is, I think, as Anne wrote, the journey map, which you saw the example of how Rhode Island did that. And another one is just, you don't want it to be too stereotypical, but you do want the idea, maybe instead of saying the client or the participant, you can be, using a name and actually humanizing that person. And I think we had some really nice moments. And Anne, I don't know if you have anything to add where, about where people were thinking about Bethany and, what would she do when she heard that, or what would her concerns have been? And do you have anything to add about, because I also see another question about challenges of using the persona.
I think just, by putting a name with the case or the client that you're talking to, instead of calling them a client or participant, like you say, just humanizes the person. It gives, I think it gives you more relational, like to be able to know what you're doing in helping a Bethany or a Emmanuel, you know, that we are making a significant difference in their lives. And I think it just puts everything back in perspective, that it's all about the client, about Bethany and Emmanuel, not just a case or processing. I think that's what I took from it.
Right. And so I think that's great. And then hopefully, you know, we did have, hopefully it's clear that we had each of the states shared just one thing, but they all did all of the things. So basically each state, like you saw Rhode Island's kind of final journey map, and they started with Rhode Island. I mean, they started developing Manuel the same way that Anne developed and her team developed Bethany, and they, you know, they really sort of tried to understand what kinds of educational goals and barriers and, you know, ambitions and also challenges would participants have.
I think you're just putting yourself in their shoes. That's basically what it's doing.
Right. And then we had them actually take a walk through the process with the customer journey map. And I know that was a lot there in the process of making a persona. There are certain assumptions that you make, and we know that ideally, I think you make multiple personas. A lot of human-centered design firms do this because there's not, you know, there's sort of different kind of common types of people with different types of goals that might come through. But also there was the key part about actually asking participants. So I was hoping, Candy, you could share. You talked a lot about your process, but are there any things you learned or assumptions that you kind of confirmed, like in terms of actually talking to when your staff actually talked to those 11 participants?
Yeah, so I think they definitely learned that some of them had had no engagement with SNAP E&T before. They've never heard of it before. In Oregon, we refer to our program, our SNAP 50/50 program, as STEP. And so we were asking them, have you participated in STEP? Have you ever heard of it before? And they had not, or they had, but they were unsure of what it meant, or it just wasn't a good fit for them at the time. And so I think, you know, we had kind of assumed that that would be the case. And so that was confirming to us. And then the access to the internet, I mean, that definitely was something we knew was going to be spotty, and that most people's access to the internet is just going to be through their phone, that they wouldn't have necessarily desktop computers or maybe even laptops available to them as resources. So I'm just confirming that was good for us too, to also know for our providers, what resources were we going to need to offer from the get-go so they could actually engage in activities.
Great. Would Anne or Patty like to say anything else about the personas or the journey mapping? I appreciate, Patty, that you wrote in the chat that you kind of, it becomes a bit of, you know, it is a map that you can refer to and go back to. And ideally, and we'll come to this next, you know, ideally some of those pain points you can actually target some of those problems, and that can unlock potential solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the persona was so important in keeping us true during the mapping process, because, you know, it would be even harder as a nonlinear process trying to make sense of it if you didn't have at least some sort of foundational sense of who and what you're planning for. It would be just harder to do, I think. So it became important to make sure that we kept our persona in the process and referred to it regularly.
For Oregon, the persona was so successful that one of our providers that we had also had included in the project, they have also taken that now within their own organization, and they are now creating a persona for them in their SNAP E&T program and the services they offer directly to those individuals. So it is nice to be able to see that tool be able to also help the program overall when they're meeting directly with providers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so I think we're gonna continue to move into the solutions, which is a really fun part. Appreciate your questions and comments, and please do continue writing them in the chat. They're really helpful to see, and we will try to address any questions as they come. And we will have a whole other section devoted to questions and comments after the 3 states share how they thought about moving from challenges to solutions. Solutions in this case were pilots that they were able to try, and I think they had some exciting early indicators of some successes there. So we were talking about kind of choice architecture and also the potential differences between behavioral and structural challenges, and the same thing comes with solutions. So I think that these are some of the categories we think about when we start to generate solutions. And we do want them targeted specifically to what we learned about the customer's experience and where they had those pain points, as especially Patty talked us through. What, you know, when is kind of the right time to talk to them about things, or could we add a time point or revise a touch point? And so we've come up with these big 4 buckets of sort of a process change where you might switch the order, or ideally, I mean, the best thing you can really do, if possible, is to try to cut down steps, because with every step, it's a new set of choices and a new set of people who you could lose along the way. So if it's possible to do things like, you know, like an orientation and an assessment in the same day or something, or, you know, things back to back, or do some of those. We've heard about warm handoffs in the past. That was a lot, I think, more conducive to pre-COVID times. So process change, environment change is, you know, that's what was the supermarket example. It could be physical, it could also be the way you think about a website. And then we have different kinds of communication. One is verbal, which would be actual talking points or scripts. And then the other is written. And you're going to hear 3 examples, 1 verbal and 2 written communication examples from these 3 states. So I do want to do, it's the last poll, so I don't know if that's good or bad, but for you all, we're curious before you hear some of the things that, your colleagues tried, curious if any of you are doing some of these things. And I think you can they pick, hopefully you can pick more than 1.
Yeah, folks should be able to pick more than 1.
Thank you, Annie. So I'll give you a minute. Yeah, so if you could think about, and then I think the idea is if you're doing some of these, you're going to hear about an eligibility worker script, and then texts, calls, and emails. And specific examples of those. And I think if you're already doing something, you might want to think about how specifically what these states are doing is different or similar. If you have any ideas of how you might want to tweak it, or at the end, you can share with us, you know, what you're doing and how it's, you know, why it's working or not working. And then the other thing is, if you're not doing any of these things, or one of these things, you might want to consider, would that actually potentially address a pain point? So I think we can share now, Annie. So yeah, I think the calls to eligible E&T clients is interesting. We're going to hear a little bit more about that. And if that, you know, that's sort of like the eligibility worker is combined. It's something that already happens. The eligibility worker already talks to clients to get them, you know, signed on to SNAP or to assess their eligibility for SNAP. All of the other ones are really extra steps, and some of them can be really proactive. So part of the question is, are you calling people who have agreed to a referral before, or are you actually calling potential participants, which is what we mean by eligible. But this is interesting to see. About a fifth of you have tried texting clients, which I think in this day and age is something that, you know, there's just going to be a group of population that's most comfortable texting over calling. I might be in that group myself. And then emails, I think, you know, again, I think sometimes the more things you can try, you might hit a different group of people, a different persona with each one. With that, we're going to move into hearing some exciting pilots that your colleagues tried. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne in Kentucky.
This was exciting to create this script. So we felt that where we, well, the key points that we wanted, why did we chose to train our staff, and then how we developed the training, and then how did the staff, what did they gain from the training, and what did the clients gain from the new script. So we took part in a collaboration with all of our involved teammates in this pilot. And we came up with, as part of your SNAP benefits, we have a free opportunity to help you gain new skills, more education to lead better jobs. You'll have a coach to focus on your goals. Does this sound good to you? Because we want to be able to, we wanted to improve and how and when we explained E&T to our clients so that more SNAP clients could understand what E&T is and accept the referral if it was deemed necessary for appropriate for them. The team developed a vision statement to guide our transition from behavior diagnosis to designing a targeted pilot. So first, our team co-designed a training for eligibility workers across the 2 participating counties. We had Fayette and Campbell. The training goals was to give the SNAP eligibility workers confidence in talking about E&T as part of their SNAP benefits by emphasizing the program, needed their help. Like we needed the eligibility workers to help us convey this message to our SNAP recipients. The training provided an hour-long refresher on E&T with the new elements like inclusion of E&T partnering agency representatives. I think this was the first time we've ever incorporated a partner or a provider in one of our DCBS trainings. And it gave compelling examples of the program for the eligibility staff. We had the training included videos, testimonies, and participation from 2 of our E&T agencies. We had Brighton Center and Northern Kentucky Area Development District, and we really appreciated their time in the pilot. The training provided eligibility workers with a script about E&T, and it was uniform information. But also we framed it as not a voluntary program, but instead as a benefit as part of their SNAP. This intervention is trying to invest in building knowledge of eligibility workers and to emphasize the importance of their role. The training also centered on the second phase of the pilot, which is a key action for eligibility staff. A behavioral informed, simple script about E&T so clients could be provided the information, or uniform information. This intervention is trying to invest in building the knowledge of eligible workers to emphasize the importance of their role. And I think and after the training, eligibility workers shared with us that they really enjoyed the training that we provided, especially the testimonies of the clients that we were able to provide, that it just gave them a sense of what they were doing on a daily basis does make a difference. So the next step for Kentucky is that we are hopeful in the next, at least first quarter, we would like to have it done in first quarter, but at least by the second quarter, train all of the rest of our counties with this training so that they can have the same information to share with the clients that they talk with at application research and case change. And I think it's the first 6 weeks of a pilot, we had 16 eligibility workers across Campbell and Fayette County. Read the script to 190 eligible individuals across the state. And basically it was 1 out of 5 of these individuals opted in to receive a SNAP E&T referral. And the second, like I said before, the eligibility staff really enjoyed the training that they received, as well as understanding and listening from the providers and partners that we have, and to know who was in their area so that they can share based on the person that they're talking to, their Bethany or Manuel, so to speak. So, so we're looking forward to implementing that, hopefully, like I said, in the next, this next quarter, the beginning of 2022. And we look forward to for doing being able to share this information with the rest of the state. And I'll turn it over to Candy in Oregon.
Hello again. So we are going to be talking about the text messages that we had elected to send out. So originally Oregon had decided to focus on connecting SNAP participants after their eligibility was determined in a follow-up conversation. And the reason we decided that we wanted to focus during that time rather than during the intake is that we already know our eligibility staff are already stretched for time to complete the eligibility intake, that their allotted time that they have is really focused on having the conversation about the elements of eligibility. And that the most we could ask for them is to mention SNAP E&T services and then get them connected to a SNAP E&T navigator so that the navigators could have that more fuller conversation. In addition to this, and actually more importantly, we found that the eligibility process can be an overwhelming process to an individual because they may be in the middle of a crisis at that moment. They're really needing just to focus on getting food on their tables. And so really having that conversation about what their employment goals are and what skill sets they need to get to that employment opportunities may just not be a good fit at that time. And they really want to focus on one thing at a time. So having the ability to follow up a day or two later offers the space for the participant to be open to the conversation about their employment goals. And then we can assist them with attaining the valuable skills that they need so they can become successful and have that economic mobility. So the navigator contacts the approved SNAP recipients. At first, they're going to call them. However, we have found that that initial call is really challenging to connect with the SNAP participants. And we have found that that happens for a variety of reasons. Just as was mentioned earlier, some people just don't like talking on the phone. Sometimes they don't answer the phone because it's an unknown caller. Or it even is sometimes from our branch offices, it can come up as scam likely. And so as we all do, we don't like taking those calls. And so the same is for our SNAP participants as well. So in those situations, we will leave a message after making that call, but we also decided it was going to be really important for us to follow up with another method of communication. And so in this case, we decided that the text message would be the route that we would go on. So on that slide, you can see some of those text messages. So there's going to be two there. One is for immediately after having or leaving that voicemail. And so some of the things that we took into consideration when developing these messages is that we had a limited amount of characters, because we know not all phones or service plans has the ability to have unlimited text or characters. And so we wanted to keep it to the basic amount that anyone that receives this message would get that full entire message. We also wanted to keep behavioral science in mind. We wanted to come across as friendly and approachable and not use government speak as much as possible. We wanted them to be able to read it and think, okay, this is someone I want to reach out to. This is someone I want to establish a relationship. And this is someone I could probably trust to be able to provide the employment and training services that they're going to offer me. We also wanted to ensure equity of services. So the availability of text messages in the requested language was very important to us, and it was vital, and we weren't going to really move forward without that ability. So when you're thinking about that need for translations, there's a lot of things that will need to go into that. You'll need, of course, the messages, initial ones, to be able to be translated, but you also have to have a way to get the responses translated as well, or have a plan in place that you can continue communicating in that requested language. We also decided it was best to make the response as easy as possible to for the participant to respond to. So that's why we had reply yes or call to learn more. We were thinking that is something that they're probably used to when they're getting these kind of messages from other organizations, that you always have a reply yes or whatever, or don't call us again. But we wanted to keep it as positive as we could. So that's why we left it at reply yes or call to learn more. We also wanted to have a second text message. And that second text message was, so if we haven't heard back from them, we still wanted to reach out to them, but we wanted to, again, to have it as friendly and approachable as we could. You'll also notice we do have names in there. So we also wanted to make it as personable as we could. So in these text messages, Jeff is the SNAP participant and Levi is our SNAP E&T navigator. So again, making that connection and having that information there for the individuals to see. We also have found that even with these informations on there, and then we could say where we're calling from, some people may still be hesitant to respond to that without knowing for sure if we are a state agency. We would have the navigators take a picture of their business cards and also send that in a text message. So one more thing to reassure them that it is not a scam and that we really are just here to help get them connected to the services that are going to hopefully most benefit them. And I think that's all. So I'm going to pass this on to Patty again in Rhode Island.
Thank you. So what you see here, folks, is we chose to go with the email. And what you're seeing is the actual email that we sent out. So we started with this and for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned earlier, we had two customers. So not only did we have the participant who may not be getting the information in a way that they could all understand, also getting it at a time where they're applying for benefits and there are a lot of other things going on. So making sure that they can get it in a way that relates to them, but also for our eligibility technicians, because of all of the things that they have to get done during an interview or an intake or a research, they may not be able to get the language conveyed the way they need to. And as Candace mentioned, the government speak kind of gets lost. So if you look at this email, you'll see that it's very easy, very low key, kind of casual in its nature. It gives folks a reason and kind of hits all those points. It's at no cost to you, give you a higher paying job. We provide childcare and transportation assistance. So touching on those participant reimbursements that are so important. The support that someone might need that they're concerned they may not have. And that was definitely related to our journey map and Manuel's need to have some extra support in his process. So we also went back to our journey map for that. But it also took an opportunity where an eligibility technician might not have done a thorough job through no fault of their own, just a time constraint. This gave us an opportunity to reach out to customers who had provided their email address and approved through that way for us to reach out to them. The email also mentions our website, which I would be remiss in not mentioning because I would recommend you take a look at it. It's really cool. And it also gave folks an opportunity to call us directly. So we have a social worker that is attached to our program. We gave that number out in the email. And then if folks needed opportunities for other services, it's also there. And our call center. And our call center was really, has been really surprising. We've done a few things outside of just this email that I'll talk about in a second. But the call center became a resource or supply of referrals. And I'll explain why in a sec. So we adapted this. We have it for our two customers in essence. We worked with our communications department to create the list, as well as our IT department. I will be honest, much like the state of Rhode Island, a small but meaningful sampling of emails went out to only 400 people over the course of a month. But that was more for me. I was concerned about providers being able to be responsive if we had significantly increased interest in E&T, that we would be able to service them appropriately and be responsive to their interests. And providers coming through the pandemic and trying to reestablish all of that. So I put the brakes on it. That's what I do. Take it slow and figure it out. And so we sent out over the next 4 weeks through the month of July, we sent out the email. The first one we sent out, the first 2 weeks we sent out with no name. And I know that this says hello with name, but they were not personalized. The second 2 weeks we sent them out personalized. What we found that was really interesting, and when you use constant contact, which is what our comms department used in order to send this out, that you can identify open rates, right? So we had 56.4% and 46% of folks who received this in the first 2 weeks, and it was not personalized, open them. And then we found as we addressed it directly to them, we had 37.5 and 36% open rate in the next 2 weeks. So we're still trying to figure that out. We might do some control groups and sort of talk to some of the folks that got it. That's in the plan to see what their thoughts were and why they did or didn't open, and if they're willing to join us to talk about that. But some of the other things that came out of the mapping that and this project that I'm super excited about, we actually did like 3 things. So first of all, we put a SNAP E&T message on our virtual call center hold time. So while folks are holding and waiting to speak with someone, they get a message about SNAP E&T. Hey, are you interested? It's for everyone in your household, so on and so forth. Very similar information to what you're seeing in the email, and also directing them to the website, how they can do a reverse referral. So it's not a lot of information. That may sound like a lot of information, but it's valuable. And our referrals from the virtual call center between sending this email out and the whole time has increased by like 20%. So we've gotten the numbers where we got very, very few before. We're getting about 15 to 17 a month over the last 3 months. So we're pretty excited about that. I mean, that for us is a very cool thing. And then to get eligibility technicians sort of thinking about employment while they're doing their research, while they're doing their interviews and their intakes, because it is a natural step and SNAP E&T is so important in the process. We added a second page to our direct referral form that we have for staff to complete. And that second page includes questions that they ask the customers to get their perception of where they are in their readiness for work, so to speak. It does not disqualify them. It does not do anything but give us information. So we ask, we do a work readiness ruler. How ready are you? How do you think you could do if you had to do your job search? So on and so forth. And then we also added a few questions about what are your perceived barriers? We don't say it like that, obviously. We say, hey, what do you think your barriers are? What do you think your skills are? So we ask a series of questions that if the eligibility technician has time, they complete and gather that information. If they don't feel they have the time, then our social worker who follows up on the direct referral is the person that then, when they contact them to talk about E&T, they will go through that form and get more of that information. So the journey map informed us in a lot of ways. We did the email as part of the pilot, but we really ended up doing a lot of other stuff. We also got and created a Teams channel with one of our offices in the Providence area, so one of our main offices, where there's a Teams channel for employment and training information to go on, so that ETs who all have access to the channel can then look up DLT listings. They can look up other listings, other job postings that I get, that my staff get, that we put up on that site, so that on that channel, so they can share them with customers, so the customers have an idea that, there are a lot of opportunities out there. So I think, this process and definitely going through that journey map and understanding, what a person's experience is, created a lot of places for us to just make little changes, and also for us to continue to do big changes. And our next plan is to kick off in October with 1,000 emails. So we're sending out 1,000 emails, 250 a week, and we're going to be in good shape. So I can't thank FNS and MDRC and SJI for the guidance, the opportunity, and certainly the folks that worked with me internally to be part of it. It was a really great experience, and I thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Patty, Candy, and Ann. I did, while we have the email up, I saw a few questions come in the chat, Patty, about the email. I don't know if you know what the subject line was. I don't remember.
Subject line, yes, the subject line was a job opportunity. So it just said job opportunity.
Nice. Yeah. And that
job or training opportunity.
A job or training opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. And then someone did ask similarly, people asked about sort of opt-in versus opt-out for both emails and then also text messages, Candy, like in terms of just wondering your kind of nuts and bolts procedures to that. Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we do not send a separate message with directions on how to opt out. But in the message, it does say, please reply yes, or you can call us to have a conversation. So we would hope if someone doesn't want to receive messages from us anymore, they would just call us to tell us that, or they could respond back and just say, please don't contact me again. But we have not created an opt-out message.
We haven't gotten to the opt-out part. We did choose only people who provided their email to us either through our customer portal or on their application, and indicated that it would be acceptable to what their preferred method of contact was. And so that's entered into the computer system for us by our eligibility technician. And so when our IT folks drew down the customers for the list, they filtered for that specifically, so that people did provide their email address, and when they do so, they agree that we can contact them in that preferred way.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really helpful. I like a lot of the things you said there about them also selecting what their preference might be, and also, yeah, I think it's actually, you could do a whole behavioral science intervention, and people have done it just on how you frame that choice of what contact information people give you and what modes of contact they're willing to participate in with text messaging and emails, especially. So there's been, there's been studies even of, parents of grade school kids, and if you do kind of, if you try to make it more automatic that they're signed up for text messages and they can opt out, most people stay with the text messages. But if you make it so that they have to sign up, then fewer than half of the parents do sign up, even though they might be interested. Great. And then the question about, for Patty, about the questions on, or the form, that question was from Erica. Is that specifically about the new questions that Patty talked about giving to the, is it the eligibility workers?
Yeah, so it's a second page that we added to our direct referral form, and those questions come from vocational assessment, but they're very, very, again, they're very human-centered. The intent is to get the person's focus, so they are about how ready are you to participate in a program on a scale of 1 to 10? How ready are you? Could you manage a job search on your own from a scale to, not a yes or no, but how ready are you to do a job search? So those kinds of questions. And then, what do you see as your barriers? And then we give the ETs a list of those barriers. So obviously transportation, childcare, criminal, any legal issues, BCI, I'm sorry, state ID issues, that sort of stuff. So it's been helpful, and it's certainly been helpful for us to gather that information, because we then get a better informed referral out to our providers. So they have a better understanding when they make that first contact of what the individual is thinking about themselves and their process and their own journey and potentially participating. And so then we can also talk about, hey, you know, you're going to get these reimbursements, you're going to get this support, and everybody does case management. So it's been a very helpful tool for us. It's still young, so you know, we're still working on making sure it gets done. And time is always an issue when you've got some for staff and the field staff, but they're doing a great job with it. So, and I'm happy to share it. I put in the comment that I would send it along to Annie for folks to take a look at. It's not proprietary in any way. It's pulled from a bunch of other just different assessments that I've worked with over the course of my life. So.
Fantastic. That's great. So just so you know, hopefully it's going by fast for you, but we only have about 15 minutes left. And I think we did want to open up the floor to ask some more questions, especially to our guests, or I can take questions as well. And I was going to start while people might be thinking. So I will say, first of all, let's see if we go back. Yeah, so this does have a little typo in it, which is my fault. I'm sorry, but I can't change it right now. But there's not supposed to be a period after gain, but where it says as part of your SNAP benefits, we have free opportunities to help you gain new skills or more education to lead to better jobs. You'll have a coach to focus on your goals. Does this sound good to you? So a couple of people asked about if they could see a specific staff script, and that is the actual staff script for E&T. And I think that just brought up for me a lot of language choices that we made, and we've heard our presenters talk about non-agency speak or friendly language, or just human language. For example, like I don't think any of these. Wait, let me check myself. I don't think any of them use the term. Is that right? You don't think you use the term ABOD, for example? So I can tell you, like, I never worked with SNAP E&T before this project. I've worked with other programs more, and when I heard ABOD, I was like, is that like a type of robot? I just don't know what it is. It's very, if you're not used to hearing it all the time, it's quite jarring. And there was a lot of language to people telling them, like, you are an ABOD and this is a voluntary program. And we worked a lot with the language, and I think made some pretty dramatic changes to how we talked about these programs in all three of these examples. So I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the language choices that you made and how you thought about, from the participants' perspective, what counts as like friendly language versus not friendly. Anne, did you want to start?
Well, I could do that as well, because we had so many scripts that our eligibility team was actually reading to our clients. But fortunately, they've adopted where several of like the work registration and the ABOD script is actually played for them. So the worker doesn't have to read it while they're finishing up their application. So that also gave us an opportunity to be able to revamp where our eligibility worker would share about the employment and training. And I wanted to mention that during our pilot, during those weeks, as our counties were rolling this out, we had meetings several times with our eligibility staff, and they had let us know that they had kind of moved it around based on the client's information. So if they were interviewing a client that had no income, they wouldn't wait till the end. They would kind of mention, well, I see that you have no income at this point, no income at this time. I can tell you about this program, and explain and do this new script there. And so they said that it worked better for them, and they were actually, and that's what we wanted. We wanted we didn't want them to have a verbatim script per se. We wanted them to be able to, look at their age of the client, look at the income level, income, are they motivated, do these different observations of their Bethany or their Manuel to determine if E&T is right for them. But give them the opportunities to share that it's an extra benefit to their SNAP benefits. It's an opportunity. It's not this, voluntary program and all these things. But yes, it is those things, but we trying to bring down and make it more basic, make it just more, I guess, to offer what the client, the Bethany and the Manual, what they need.
And then Candy, yeah, if you want to share a little bit
Sure,
about
yeah.
that process.
So for Oregon, going back to that eligibility script that we have for our staff too, one of the things that we took from this project, and really a recommendation in the conversation we had with Rebecca, is to make it an opt out rather than an opt-in process. So instead of asking the question, does this sound good to you? Do you want to engage in the program? We say, we're going to get you connected and refer you to a SNAP E&T navigator. So that does really give them the option. I mean, they can say no, but they're more likely just to go along with it. And then we'll have the navigator reach out to them with that phone call and then the follow-up text message if they can't get a hold of them during that phone conversation. In our text messaging, some of that friendly speak, like in that first one and the second one, we're using first names. So it's friendly, it's hi, Jeff, how you doing? That kind of a thing. And in the second one, again, it's using his first name and then also saying life is busy, but I'm still here for you. So please feel free, to get connected to me. So that kind of thing is where we were trying to make it more friendly and open to having them connect with us.
Great, thanks. Patty, did you have anything to add there?
Always have something to add, I think. No, I think that we really talked about it, and when we went with Annie and Clinton and Bob, we really focused on making sure it was an approachable document, so that when people saw it and read it, and just trying to hit on some key points that were important to people. And obviously the benefit at no cost is always significant. And so that was important. And also, as I said, just giving people a lot of opportunities to connect, a lot of different places for them to connect. So they didn't feel like, oh, I have to follow this one rule or this one place, or, there's a lot of places that you can access the SNAP E&T program. And it also helped the staff feel a little more comfortable and less pressured, obviously, about if they didn't get everything right, there was some follow-up. So, and I just want to mention that we also were able to send this through Constant Contact in preferred language that was drawn down, along with, obviously the folks that were chosen were email as a preference, but we were able to send it out in Spanish and Portuguese as well.
Great, thank you for sharing that. We have time for one or two more questions if there are any. There's been really great engagement in the chat. So also if you just want to leave any, even comments, I think are really helpful for us as facilitators to find out, what's resonating, what seems relevant, where you might still have questions. Yeah, I did a quick skim through the chat, and I think that we addressed some of the specific questions. Let's see. Oh yeah, I did see something about remind.com. I was interested. Is that Todd? I think you posted about that, Todd Hunter.
Yes, one of our providers used the free service. She doesn't
You can pay, and I don't know what all you get with that, but she uses the free service they provide via the internet. It allows, it protects her, because she uses her personal cell phone. It protects her number, but it also is a number that's appealing for folks to get that text message. And we have others that use it too, but I reached out to a particular provider when I posted that comment.
Okay, great. Yeah, and it sounds, Todd, like from your posting in the chat that you've also done a lot of this, what we would call participant centering or, empathy building techniques to really put yourself in the shoes of the participants. You shared a document in the chat and you talked about doing a poverty simulation. Do you have any advice for other people who might be interested in doing those kinds of things?
This year, we're really taking a hard look at this. This presentation went along well with what we're looking at this year. We're taking a hard look at our providers' processes. Just as the presenters identified, there's so many ways that our clients come into us. And in adult education, there's a myriad of ways that we receive them as well. So we're really encouraging our folks to look within their internal processes on several things: bottlenecks, places where people fall out or stop out, and identifying those barriers, just as this has been mentioned. I really appreciate this. This has been very informational.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for your and other folks' great participation in the chat. So to wrap up, and feel free to keep using the chat. We just have a few more minutes, but I did want to summarize, some of the key takeaways of what we've been talking about, which I think has also been reflected in the chat. I think it's just, to me, it's sort of summed up by this mental image I have about sort of like, a conference room with a circular table at one end of the hall, at the end of the hallway, that has all these administrators, maybe some people, from the state level coming to a county office, and they're sort of shaping, policy or thinking about a program. And then right down the hall, there's all of these, of course, COVID notwithstanding, but there's all of these, clients or participants right there in the waiting room. And just this idea, and they're talking to your frontline staff every day. And just the idea of trying to break down this kind of wall that sometimes seems to be built between policy and the humans at the center of human services, as we spoke about. And so I think just this idea of talking to your participants, one thing that was shared, I know, from some of Candy's colleagues in Oregon and also some other colleagues across the country when they've done these participant interviews, is, just how much even, and I've seen it too personally, when you talk to participants and just ask them what they think about these programs, I think, some of them are not going to have time, are not going to pick up, but some of them are very, I think, excited and interested to have their voices heard in these programs that are designed, to serve them. So that's one thing. And I think just staying curious and trying, if you are assuming certain things are going to work, trying to check your assumptions, talking to people, piloting things, and actually taking the time, like I think Patty, Candy, and Anne have shared about actually, deciding when you set out, what success would look like, what you're going to measure, whether it's constant contact clicks or it's actually, at least Anne, and I think Candy as well, maybe. Yeah, I know Oregon and Kentucky each, like they set up their own spreadsheets that sometimes eligibility worker supervisors manage to just manually track some of these new things we're trying and say, how many people did we read the script to and how many people said yes to a referral? And ideally that becomes integrated with your regular process. But if that's a big barrier, then just starting with a really simple tracker, I think, can give you an idea if you're even moving in the right direction and if you are actually directly addressing a pain point and therefore hopefully improving outcomes. And so the very last thing I'll say is really appreciate all of the engagement, and there is what we hope will be a very useful toolkit that should be coming out this month. So ideally within the next week or two, so it's almost ready for prime time. And if you want to see the sneak peek of the way that that's organized, yeah. So it has its own roadmap once you open the toolkit, although this is a preview and subject to change. But you know, we've really summarized, I would say, understanding the issues. We've summarized some of the approaches that Kentucky, Rhode Island, Oregon, and our other partners in SNAP to Skills used. And then if you remember when we first asked you about which point in the process did you think was the biggest missed opportunity, the toolkit is designed for you to think about how you would better understand issues across not just that first contact that we talked about today, but also service matching, handoffs, and reverse referrals. And then there's a lot more detail on different brainstorming activities to generate a long list of solutions, which all of the states did. And then a lot of the states, you know, were actually able to implement more than one thing. And then at the end, there's specific worksheets like how do you, you know, do like what's a template for those interviews, or how do you create a hypothesis statement or a vision statement of, you know, why you think if you change X, because you've learned about how participants behave, and this is a pain point, if you change X, you think they're gonna improve, you know, their understanding of the information, and therefore more people are gonna be interested. So we're excited to release that, and you should be hopefully getting some kind of email announcement. That is not my specific role, but I think that will be on the website, and there will be some kind of email promoting it. So definitely look out for that. And then if you do ever want to just reach out to me directly, that is my email, just rebecca.schwartz@mdrc.org. Annie also, who owns this meeting, you should have her email, and we work closely. And then CABS, the specific Center for Applied Behavioral Science, where I work, has our own website as well, if you ever want to take a look, and hopefully it's as pretty as Rhode Island's. So I think with that, we are just about at time. People may even have a stretch break before their next meeting. But yeah, I just want to thank you all so much for your participation, and yeah, hope to hear from you or see you again soon.